can't see me, you Stevie. Wondering how I reach more evolutions than Eevee and make it look easy.
What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Ernie, the Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. All right, so before we get into today's video, make sure you hit that subscribe button and tap that notification bell. That way you don't miss out on anything. Also, make sure you hit that like button too, because it really helps me out on the algorithm and ensures you see more of my videos, as well as other people like you also seeing more of my videos. Today we're going to be talking about Uncanny X-Men number 5. In this issue, while the cover would have you believe that, the lion's share of the storytelling is on Gambit's side, it's actually not the case. This is the finale of the opening story arc for X-Men in the From the Ashes era. This is the end of Act 1 for Sarah Gaunt. And I say that because, well, in the previous issue, it seemed like Sarah Gaunt was unstoppable. The issue before that, it seemed like she was just as unstoppable. She was able to take out Wolverine using her talons made of somber steel that seemingly was as strong as adamantium, and she put Wolverine on his ass. And while, yes, she fought Rogue the very next issue, and it seemed like, Rogue was given as good as she got, but at the end of the day, Sarah Gaunt also got that ass. But this issue, it doesn't seem like that's going to be the case. I say all this because as we play through this issue, we see that while Rogue seemingly has been killed by Sarah Gaunt, that's actually not entirely true. She is on the verge of death, but before she crosses those pearly gates into the upper room, we see that she encounters the character we were introduced to in the first issue, Harvey X. Harvey X was a young mutant who seemed to have precognitive abilities, and he was dying of a terminal illness. And when the X-Men came to visit him, it was what I would say arguably is the happiest day of his life. Only problem is that he died, but when he did, he imparted some words of wisdom to the X-Men as his dying words, referring to an Endling. And we'll get more into that here in a moment, but we see Harvey X again, and this time he's warning Rogue that she is about to die if the right things don't happen. It's revealed that when Rogue initially met Harvey X, they shared very briefly skin-to-skin contact. Now, with Rogue's powers and how they work, her powers aren't necessarily as devastating to people as what they used to be, especially if that person is willing. There's really no harm involved in the same ways that it used to be. And while technically you would think, well, if Rogue was touched by someone, she would probably notice if she gained someone's abilities, but apparently the way it was done, Harvey did this in between the panels. I actually went back and looked at the first issue. There's at no point where we actually see Harvey touch her in any way that's direct skin-to-skin contact. But as it's shown here, there was a point where he slipped in a touch when Rogue wasn't really paying attention. And in this, he gifted her a small portion of his powers that he gave over willingly, just enough to make her a little bit more intuitive to events that were going on around her, because one of the things that he said before he died was that there were mutants who were going to darken Rogue's door, and that one of them is the Endling. And this is important because the Endling is a word we hear twice in that first issue. It's not just Harvey who says something about the Endling. We also saw that Soderong, the very same dragon that Gambit received the Eye of Agamotto from, he mentioned something about an Endling as well. And while we don't get any more information about that specifically, Harvey does show Rogue some glimpses into the future, things that are said to happen way later down the stretch. Things like a woman who seemingly has Cyclops' power set, which, whether or not this is an alternate reality or something that is actually going to happen, is another story altogether. But she's wearing the old X-Men fit, the old New Mutants fit to be specific, and has Cyclops' visor and seemingly his powers. We also see a Nightcrawler with 4 arms, which is kind of interesting when you consider the fact that going back to the Fall of X era, we had the Uncanny Spider-Man series, and while at no point did Nightcrawler gain Spider-Man's powers, it is funny that he literally just spent some time acting as a Spider-Man and now has come out of it and will soon have 4 arms in the future, very similar to what happened to Peter Parker and the whole man spider debacle. Now, we also have to take a look at what's going on with Magneto, because there's a point where we see Magneto, he's either taking his helmet off or is just about to place it on. But considering he's been wearing his helmet a lot lately, it seems like he's about to take the helmet off, but we don't really know what's going on. But he looks incredibly intense. Also, does not seem to be as old as what he has been depicted as in the more recent issues of Jed MacKay's X-Men series. We also see, and this is probably the most ominous one of them all, it's Colossus laying in a pool of blood surrounded by what are cybernetic hounds. Hounds that we technically already saw in the bonus page for the first issue, though we didn't really have a whole lot of context for who or what these were, but it seems like this is something that's probably going to come from the Grey Malkin prison side of things. Before we go any further in today's video, I want to give a shout out to today's sponsor, ComicCapsule.com. For those unfamiliar, comic capsules are the perfect way to protect your comics. If you are a collector, someone who is just really deep off into making sure that your comics are in the best possible condition, you want to make sure they are protected by the best possible thing, ComicCapsule.com has you covered. And now they're bringing on full-on Pokemon vibes, because now you can get Fiery Red or Icy Blue. Not only can you get both the Fiery Red and Icy Blue versions of the comic capsules, they come in both modern and Silver Age size. Now, another awesome thing that they've come out with, I'm a huge fan of too, is the comic cape. These are awesome because, well, you can't really see it here, but there is a full-on protective shield in front of this comic inside of the bag. You also have it on the back side of it as well. And because of that, the comic cape provides 100% UV protection. I'm sure I don't have to tell many of you diehard collectors out there the importance of protecting your comics from UV rays. They can actually deteriorate and completely destroy the value of your comic. Now, normally I'd have a promo code to give you guys, but actually have a little bit of a tip instead. There is a 25% off site-wide sale, Black Friday sale on ComicCapsule.com. Go get your Fiery Red and Icy Blue comic capsules while you can, because they are not reprinting these. These are a one-time deal. Once they are gone, they are gone. So make sure you go to the link in the description below. Go check out ComicCapsule.com. Go pick up some comic capsules. Go pick up some comic capes. You have from until literally right now until December the 25th to take advantage of the deal. So what are you waiting for? Go to ComicCapsule.com right now. Don't walk. Run to the website. Go run to the link in the description and go get 25% off your comic capsule purchases. With that said, let's get back to the video. And once again, we don't get any more information about the whole Endling thing, but I'm gonna go ahead and tell you right now, the way that it's all being set up is that, yes, it is one of the 4 outliers. I'm gonna go ahead and tell you right now, Death Dream is the obvious choice, but he's so obvious that it should not be him. And I'm gonna go on a limb and say that it isn't him. Ransom might actually be another too obvious choice, just based on his power set alone, similar to Death Dream. I'm also gonna say probably not him. Jitter, I think, would be the one that would probably shock people the most. So like, if you want to do like a huge swerve, Jitter would definitely be the character to make the Endling, but I don't think it's her either. I think the most obvious one is Calico. She's the one who's shown in the bonus page looking very somber, looking very sad at the potential death of something, potentially her horse Ember. Who knows? I mean, she's the one. She is the one who, it makes the most sense without being too damn obvious, of being turned into something with a name like the Endling. But yeah, and we also don't really know the full breadth of her powers. We see in this, she's able to not just take on a fiery, almost phoenix-like form, but she also seems to be able to wreathe herself and her horse in juggernaut armor. So yeah, I'm gonna go and let me say it's her. It's definitely her. But to get back to Rogue and what's going on with Harvey X, Harvey basically, he's saving the last bit of his powers. He uses the last of his power to give Rogue all of this information that I just kind of disseminated to you, but also at the same time hand over a taste of his healing factor, explaining why he was able to survive as long as he did while he was terminally ill, and why he was able to hold on until the X-Men were no longer dealing with Orcus shenanigans in order to come see what he had to say. Now, that said, once Rogue gets that little touch of healing, this is where the book, I'm not gonna lie, it smooth lost me there for a moment, because everything just kind of rushes to the end, and I'm not sure what happened. I'm not really sure, what's going on here with this part of it, but I do feel like when we get to the Sarah Gaunt part of it again, where Rogue seemingly goes up against this character who was beating the brakes off both her and Wolverine, and suddenly she's able to piece Sarah Gaunt up in like 3 strikes. She, a punch, a knee, and she breaks her arm. And all of this in the middle of her touching Sarah Gaunt and taking her memories to see what actually happened that caused Sarah to be the way she was. We learned the truth, or at least we thought we learned the truth about Sarah Gaunt, but there was actually a lot more to the story. I talked about this in the previous video for Uncanny X-Men #4, stating that, she had a child at some point. Seemingly she was supposed to have one with Charles, but Charles was in disbelief of it and seemingly kind of wanted to distance himself from her. And I can safely say Charles is not as much of a fuckboy as, well, he is a fuckboy, but not as much of one as we initially might have thought. There was no child. As a matter of fact, he says himself that he doesn't detect any brainwave activity from a child in what would be her womb. And it makes sense that he would say that because, let's be real. A guy who has telepathic powers on his level would be able to sense even the faintest of brain activity from a pregnant woman, no matter how early. Technically, and while I don't want to get into a metaphysical debate about, when life starts, but enough that I imagine Charles would be able to tell that there was none. And you take into consideration the fact that this is also a guy who strangled his own twin sister to death in the womb. If anyone would know, it would be Charles. But that said, yes, Rogue uncovers the whole thing. That yes, there was no child, and pretty much what I had assumed, the child that she lost during Hurricane Katrina was not Charles's kid, but maybe someone else's child, and trying to help her understand that it wasn't her fault that she lost her child. But at the end of it all, she's able to incapacitate Sarah Gaunt, and she takes her to the place that I kind of felt was the least likeliest place that she should have taken her. She takes her back to Dr. Ellis. You're back to Graymalkin, and I'm shocked that Rogue went this direction with it. Though I feel like this was a little bit of Rogue having a moment very similar to some that Cyclops has gotten a few of lately. A moment to let the bad guy know that, yeah, there's nothing you can do to me, and whatever you do try, I'm ready for you. Basically a run up and get done up moment. She brings Sarah Gaunt to Dr. Ellis and basically tells her, don't ever let her out again. And even openly admitting that she's doing something that she's completely against, handing Sarah Gaunt over to someone who is very likely going to try to use her or weaponize her no differently than she's already done. The other end of it too is the fact that Rogue lets her know that, yeah, I'm going to come back for Graymalkin. I'm coming back to the Westchester mansion and I'm going to take it back, which kind of lets us know where, or at least what is the launching point for the raid on Graymalkin. This is basically Rogue saying, hey, 2 more issues, I'm coming to get that ass. I'm coming to get that ass. I'm coming to collect. The bill has come due. I want my shit back. That's basically what Rogue is saying here in no uncertain terms. And Dr. Ellis knows this, but she has also been warned. Rogue has warned Dr. Ellis not to do anything with Sarah, or else she's going to come back earlier than expected. So there's also that to contend with. So the raid on Graymalkin is 2 issues away. We'll have to wait and see what happens to, get the full story there on that. But I will say, in the midst of all this, in the fact that Gambit uses the Eye of Agamotto to hold back Sarah Gaunt's forces, including the mutant Fawn, who I don't know what's going to happen to her. Has she been rid of all of Sarah Gaunt's influence? And if so, is she going to hang around with the X-Men? Difficult to say. But what I'm curious about, we know that Gambit has the power now. He has the power of a sorcerer. A sorcerer not quite supreme. He has his power. He's going to have it for a full year. Soderon just said, yeah, you can have it. I'll be back for it in a year, and I'm going to take my shit back. but Gambit's able to use it, and without really seemingly much consequence. So I wonder what's going to be the blowback, if there is going to be any blowback for him using this power. And if so, there's got to be a reason Sodaron gave up the eye so freely. He clearly could have taken it back from Gambit. He had the power to do so. He let him have it. So there's a reason why Gambit's being allowed to keep it. Whether it's for good or ill is another story altogether. But yeah, seeing the Outliers and the X-Men working together, fighting together, having their quips, having their banter, it was all good. I thought all of that was great. But it was just really the how nice and neat everything just got cleaned up. I was just like, oh man, that's not really the ending I was expecting. Though I do feel like, while yes, that was kind of the end of that arc, maybe we'll get a little more fallout in the next issue to kind of see, maybe where everybody's at. But yeah, as it stands, yeah, I will say, yeah, of all of the 5 issues of Uncanny X-Men have come out so far, I've loved all of them. This is the only one that I thought was just okay. Like, and that's with everything that was going on in it. I feel like maybe, I don't know. I don't know what I would have done differently or how you could have done it differently. It's actually kind of an unenviable task. It's an unenviable task, especially knowing that there's a major story arc right around the corner. I will definitely say, though, the thing I actually loved about this book more than anything, didn't have anything to do with Sarah Gaunt, didn't have anything to do with Gambit the Eye or the Outliers, even for that matter. What it actually had to do with was Rogue at the very beginning. And honestly, I kind of feel like, man, I would have loved to have seen a little more of that. The fact that Rogue was taking diction classes, on how to speak better, to get rid of her Southern accent, which I will say, kind of going back and thinking about it, during the Krakoan era, she still had her Southern accent. It kind of depended on who wrote Rogue at the time. I can't vouch for the entirety of the Krakoan era for Rogue, but I can definitely say that during the Rogue and Gambit series, Rogue did speak with a bit more prim and properness than what you would probably associate with the character. Her language read, at least on the letters for it, it wasn't so much that she wasn't, Southern coded, but like a lot of the kind of trademark Rogue isms, they were not as pronounced as much during the Krakoan era. So I think maybe this is what this is a dig at, especially the Rogue and Gambit series. But I would also even say in the Excalibur series, Rogue didn't have some of the the trademark Southernisms. Like here, it's a lot more pronounced. She actually has a lot more Southern diction in this, just in how you read her dialogue, the way it's written out, how some things are spelled phonetically. It is definitely something that when I go back and think about the Krakoan era, I actually went back, looked at some issues that specifically had Rogue in them, and for the most part, almost all of them, she actually does speak a lot more. I won't say 100% proper. She still uses slang and Southern isms, but they are spelled a very certain way. And I think this is what Gale is getting at, and maybe even why it's not spent very much time on. Even though I would have liked a little bit more time on this, just to kind of send the message home just a little bit more. Like the one comic in the Krakoan era that I think actually handled Rogue in her Southern accent better was in the Uncanny Avenger series. That one, I feel like Rogue was a bit better about her Southern isms, and whenever she was in the X-Men series, like the core X-Men series, when Jerry Duggan was writing it, I do feel like there were a lot more moments where her Southern isms were a bit more pronounced. It all made, I would dare say, a lot more sense. Like, it wasn't quite the same as what it is here in the Uncanny series right now, but it was definitely a lot closer than any of the other Krakoan. So yes, justice for Rogue, I'm here for it. At the end of it all, I still enjoy the issue, just I wish I would have liked it a lot better. I feel like, I don't know, there was something that just wasn't quite there, and I think there was a story that got left on the table. I wanted that other story a little bit more, and that's with everything going on. I feel like you could have kind of wrapped it around, used it as like a wraparound for that issue, but yeah, I do appreciate the end of the Wolverine told Gambit to tell Rogue to stop taking the diction classes. Why Wolverine won't just tell her himself, I guess because he was planning on leaving. I don't know. There's a lot that's going on here, and I feel like it's going to take some more issues to really like hash some of it out. But yeah, I think this first story arc, while I think it started off great, I thought, it went on great. I feel like it ended a little clunky. It ended a little clunky, which is kind of a disappointment to me, but I think overall still a great story nonetheless. Even with the ending as clunky as it is, everything else before was so good that it's like, okay, fine. It's like, all right, I'll go with it. Let's just get to the next thing. Let's get to the next story. I want to see what's going on with the Outliers. That's basically where my head's at right now.